Get ready for some upbeat banter, plenty of laughs, and a whole lot of love for the game and our team. This is Buds and Blue Jays. And now your hosts, Riley McConnell and Jesse Burrell.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Thursday, October 3rd, and welcome to the offseason, and welcome to episode 216 of Buds and Blue Jays. It's your place for all things related to the Toronto Blue Jays. Jesse Burrell here, joined with Jesse Teresio, and today on the show, Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro had their end-of-season press conference, and we've gotten a lot of generic corporate bullcrap from the two of them, but we will try to do what we do anyway, is to break down the press conference that they made and tell us what it means for the offseason and for the future of the Toronto Blue Jays. And then in the second half of this episode, we're going to take a look at some lessons that this tough 2024 Toronto Blue Jays season had taught us. So we will follow in on all that and so much more. But Jesse, my guy, welcome to the offseason. Glad to have you. How are you feeling? We did it. We made it through what was a very tough Toronto Blue Jays season this year.
Need a little bit of a break just to decompress and understand the torture I just went through for 162 games. But I definitely am starting to feel rejuvenated and ready for this off season and all the anger I'm about to have during this. So, like the anger come again and the gray hairs join in too.
Oh, man, it's not like opening day, right, where you get down into camp and you feel like things are all rejuvenated again. Everything feels fantastic. Every team has the same record. You feel like you're going to win again. The offseason can kind of feel the same way in a sense because you never know. What players are you going to sign? Are we tracking Shohei Ohtani's jet again? Like, who knows what this team might look like come opening day? But as you've kind of mentioned there, boy, it does not sound like this is going to be a fun offseason for the Toronto Blue Jays with a lot of the generic crap we got from Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins, which we'll dive into a little bit this episode here.
No, exactly. And we're at the base of the roller coaster about to go up and now. And then once the season starts, we start heading down.
That's exactly it, my guy. Well, without further ado, because we got a lot to get to, I'm sure if you are on any Blue Jays social media, or if you've been watching Sportsnet or anything like that lately, you saw some comments from the press conference that went. And before we dive into analyzing each of the questions that was asked and what we think it means for this team going forward and into the winter here, I want you to listen carefully to the answers that these guys give you, because these are going to be the things that help lead into the mind of the decisions that the Blue Jays are going to make. Right? At one point in this press conference, Ross Atkins said adding power is a low-hanging fruit. So at some point in this offseason, when we're making all these rumors that, Pete Alonso was on his way here, or Anthony Santander hit 44 home runs and it's power, and they would make such a great fit for this team, I can't believe it's going to happen. It's not going to happen if these are the quotes that our general manager and stuff is making. So note for that, right? Because the offseason is great for Blue Jays fans, but boy, it drives me nuts sometimes when some people are out there just sticking things to the wall and hoping it sticks. So these are the quotes you should pay attention to, because it'll accurately predict most what the Blue Jays are going to do this offseason. Follow me there?
You got it. And I got to tip my cap to that new quote of the year.
Took you 3 minutes into this episode to break out a tip my cap, this one, Jesse. So a lot better. All right. Well, let's get into it then a little bit here, into the Shapiro press conference. And I've actually got some clips and some audio, so bear with us as we try to get some of the audio up here. But the first question, very plain and simple, that Mark Shapiro was asked in this episode was simply, will Ross Atkins be back as general manager of the Toronto Blue Jays? Because if there was going to be a firing, this was the time he would do it. And hold on, as we load it up on YouTube here, we will get your answer here. So here's what he said. All right, Jesse. So some interesting things there on the question of will Ross Atkins be back as general manager? Give me your initial take after hearing this from Mark Shapiro.
That Shapiro has way too much trust in him. Like, yes, I do understand we've been, you'll hear probably in other clips, that we've been successful 4 out of the 5 years of making the playoffs and winning and all this mumble jumble corporate BS. It's time for him, time for that change and that new direction and that I'll call it a new era for the Jays. And yes, we're going to our core pieces are Bo and Vlad, but we need that person who's going to be like, I'm going to get these star players, almost like what Anthopoulos did in 2015. Like, I'm going to just sell the farm or sign the money, get these players to win because we're in a win now, like a get or done league, as Josh Donaldson said, not the try league. Like we
Right.
need. I'm disappointed that he's coming back in the sense because I thought after this year it was a tall tale sign that shit needs to change and we're going through it's just becoming a disaster so quickly right after 4 good years. But it is what it is.
I think the fact that they didn't fire him at the trade deadline when there was rumors that Ross Atkins might be finally biting the bullet here, that they were going to keep him, especially because he's only under contract for one more season, just like a lot of other Toronto Blue Jays are only under contract for one more season. What do you take about the quote, though, that he said that if I was able to find a better alternative, I would. I just don't think I can find a better alternative than Ross. I thought James Clicks was here. I thought it was supposed to be his role. What's the deal with that, Jesse?
That's literally what I'm thinking is you have James Click. There's even other managers that have had success that are still out there that are either unemployed or different roles in other organizations, or even maybe you have someone within your organization. Why? It's it's just there is a better candidate, and I just feel like Shapiro's just doing what he did to Cleveland before he left.
I think he just wants to see this whole game plan through, that they came in when they came in 9 years ago, right? That their whole plan was to set a hard rebuild at the end of the 2026 season, and they are sticking with that plan going in here. So Ross Atkins still at the top of the general manager ladder here. And then we have some more news coming out. And this next one might be a little more interesting. And I think this next question that he was asked was the big one that's going to generate the most media headlines. And he was asked about if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was a quote unquote generational player, which, might I mind you, John Schneider, our manager, said he exactly was legit not even 3 days ago. So I want to bring that up, and I will flash in the video here, and we can talk about that on whether or not Vlad is a generational player. Well, Jesse, I would say that's not a glowing endorsement of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and our franchise player. What is your take on this here? Surprising comments from our president on our best player.
Firstly, I say the question was pretty much by the media member was really trying to stir up a storm there and cause havoc. So I I think Shapiro answered it perfectly because if he said yes, he's a generational player and all or anything like that, who knows that if Vladdy's agents or that will come back and try to use that as leverage. So he's trying to keep it as a businessman. I'm not going to say it because this might backfire. Um, yes, he's a great player. Yes, he's a six-war player. I'm not knocking Vladdy. But I can say there's a couple of generational players I would say could be more generational player compared to Vladdy already in the MLB. So I feel like that term generational player is very lenient nowadays compared to back in the olden days where and also it's being thrown around. I can say generational players would be Otani, Bobby Witt, Judge, Jordan Alvarez, and right now playing they can become on the way there. Vladdy's up there, yes, but I wouldn't say he's a generational player. He's definitely a cornerstone franchise and can become one, but we've only had 2 really good years of Vladdy, so it's one of those questions where it could turn bad for their negotiations.
Might I remind you, some of the stuff that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has done in his major league career at an age so young has been, I read off the list a few episodes ago, has been done by 13 players in major league history. They are all in the Hall of Fame or soon to be in the Hall of Fame players. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is on that pace, on that trek. I absolutely think he is a quote unquote generational player. I think you're right about the point, though, that, hey, he's going into negotiations and they're going into arbitration this year. Don't you forget that. And if he does go into arbitration and an arbiter hears, oh, our president thinks he's a generational player, then, of course, Vladdy's going to win that argument because you can't say that and then 2 months later go in and bash him for all the reasons you don't think he is. I don't like that he threw shade at the Pete Rose, rest in peace, Pete Rose, 200 hits in a season when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. went 0 for 2 with 2 walks in the last day of the year and did not get to 200 hits. And now Mark Shapiro is saying, well, he's not a generational player. He couldn't get to 200 hits. That blows. And I don't know. It seems like he's throwing some shade, especially when John Schneider just literally earlier this week was saying how Vlad's a generational player.
Oh, I know. When I heard him mention Pete Rose, I was like, oh. I was just kind of cringed on that one. Too soon. The guy, one just died, and then literally, Vlad was the closest to 200 hits in how many years for in almost over 20 years for the Jays. So it's kind of a little shot at Vladdy. I was like, ooh, that may not sell.
He's absolutely a generational player, and we'll see how things go going forward here. The next question is actually kind of similar, and Mark Shapiro was asked about, hey, going into the next season, with both Vlad and Bo not under contract next year, how are we going to go about that? And we'll just see what he said here. So, Jesse, my instinct from listening to that comment right there is that I don't think we're getting a contract extension for Vlad or Bo, period. Just same thing. He said, we'll focus on that next year when he goes into free agency. Look, things might change, and maybe I'm reading between the lines too much, but it sounds to me like their plan is they're going to take Vlad and Bo to free agency and see if they can get something done about that. How do you feel about that?
It almost feels like they're trying to do what the Frankie Stankies did with the Arson Judge. So where everyone thought he was going to San Fran and all that. Mm-hmm. Well, on that, I was listening to a different show and they were talking about the whole Bo Bichette situation, contract coming off a bad year and all that. Right now is the time to sign him. I want to put right now. After this horrible season, you sign him. You can get him at a way cheaper deal compared to what he did in 21, 2, or 23. You sign right now to a 10-year deal. You get him until the age of 36. It won't be like a Machado deal. 10 years, $150 million. 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 10 what Bichette is normally going to be like is what we seen in the early, like every year other than this year. One of the top, like a top hit offensive shortstop, or even move him to a different position if you sign a free agent that sign top free agent shortstop. Um, you literally sign him right now. You get him on a deal. If yes, if he continues to play like he did this year, yeah, that's a little price you gotta pay. Like that would be the worst case. But if he turns back to what he did like the last, other seasons in his career, you just gotta steal, and then you can say also sign Vonnie, and you're not really handcuffing your franchise. Like this
So it
is
makes
the time
sense.
to sign. This is the time to sign Bo. Like he needs to. And then the shortstop, I'm saying, you bring Willie Adams, you can either move Bo to third, or you move him to second. And there's a like which could really help your infield.
If you're signing Bo Bichette to a 10-year deal, he's your shortstop. You'd have to have Adames play another position. And I don't know if you're going to go to Willie Adames and be like, hey, I know you've been a great shortstop. Come play second base with us. Now, Marcus Semien did it. So there are examples of some players who can, but I don't think that's going to happen. We can dive into this a little more this offseason. I don't think the Blue Jays should sign Bo Bichette long term. I think if you look at some of the stats, some of the things that he can control, his sprint speed just dropping dramatically over the last few years. His defense got good, but it's just league average at best. He's never going to be more than a 20 home run bat, even at his finest. And yes, the contact skills are great. He can drive the ball. And when Bo Bichette is right, there are doubles going. But at this point, I think he's basically Luis Ariz without as good as bat to ball skills as Luis Ariz. And do I really want to give that player 10-year deals, 190 some million dollars? I don't think I do, but we can get into that a little later into the offseason here. But it sounds like either way, like they're going forward with these two guys going to be free agents at the end of the year, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens with these guys here.
Oh, definitely. Like hopefully them just doing this is playing with, as saying, there's a wool over our eyes, and they do get an extension early in the winter. But there's more from this press conference that makes us think not.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk to you a little bit more about that later in this episode because there was a lot of extension talks, especially when we get to Ross Atkins. Next thing, though, on payroll expectations for the Toronto Blue Jays going into next year, Ross Atkins said at the trade deadline, Mark Shapiro said at the trade deadline that they fully expect to compete in next season. And I think as Blue Jays fans, anytime management says that your payroll is not going to decrease, it is good. But let's hear what Mark Shapiro said about the payroll going into the 2025 offseason. All right, Jesse. Payroll not moving too much in a big way. What are your thoughts on this and what this means for the team this winter?
The one thing I always got from him, but it was how they're like, oh, we'll figure it out during the winter meeting and like later on in the offseason. How do you not know after the trade deadline what you have to what you have to play with and what you got like how much your budget is? Like, isn't that part of the trade deadline too? Like, if you're a seller to like get rid of some contracts so you can have the flexibility for next season to sign key players or key
Yeah,
members of your
I think they
franchise.
know.
Like,
I think
how?
they have a good idea on what they're going to do.
Oh, I think they know, and but yet they're not really go like they're not telling us. And it's like us fans and media members, we kind of want to know because if say our budget is 50 million, that definitely means we're not going for like we'll probably be likely out of the Juan Soto deal, which most of us believe we are anyways. Um, but like working to say that 50 million like 50 million go towards like in the offensive side and defensive side, like or pitching side of it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm taking away from this is that actually he said it's not going to limit who Ross goes after, and then he second and double down and said anybody. I think that means Juan Soto. I think the Blue Jays are actually going to have interest in Juan Soto and are probably going to make him an offer. Which, hey, they had interest in Shohei Ohtani last year. That was going to cost like what, $900 million, right? So there's interest there. They can get the approval from ownership if they think this is right. If they don't go after Juan Soto, just literally go to Fangraphs, look at the tax thresholds. The Blue Jays got under the luxury tax this season, which means they don't have to pay penalties, I believe, for 2 more years going to next year. So they can take on some money this offseason. And I do genuinely feel like the Blue Jays are going to do that, whether it's a Bo or Vlad extension, whether it's a Juan Soto contract, or whether they have to overpay for a shit ton of relievers. It's going to be something, and the Blue Jays are absolutely going to be adding money this offseason, which I'm taking as a positive from that statement from Mark Shapiro.
No, it's definitely a positive. Like they're like the sky's the limit, but like it just when you don't get like obviously they don't give us a certain number, you're just like, and how many times the Jays have been frugal in the past, especially under Shapiro and Atkins, i.e. Kendrys Morales, or Jay Estrada and Jay Happ and stuff like that. And like so, like in their history, when you don't hear them saying we're going to go out and spend big,
it's just it's the negotiation tactic again, right? They don't want to tell agents, hey, we have $50 million to spend, and when the Blue Jays have only spent $20 million, and here comes Scott Boras with a $30 million player going, hey, here you go, right? And that's the reason why he's not doing it. But it's stuff like that. All right, and then the last question for Shapiro was about the depth, and the team really struggled with depth. And let's see what the owner said about that. Oh, a few seconds behind here. Here we go. Okay, I'll pause there and then I'll play the rest in just a minute here. But Jesse, a lot to take out there, but the lack of depth. And he talked a lot about the farm here. And you're a notable farm system guy. What did you take about this quote from Mark Shapiro?
Again, the depth of our franchise. Like, yes, we've traded like there's a lot of key prospects we've traded in the past. Like I'll name some like Simeon Wood Richardson, Austin Martin, Gunnar Hoagland, just like 3 just on the top of my head, like are definitely, and like again, we haven't been successful, so that means obviously lower draft picks and that, and then with thankfully with those trades we made this year, we brought those 14 like even prospects. I'll even call like Loa Perfino prospect and Clase because they're still not is they're on the right way to replenishing it, but it's like the more you draft and develop and not have all these key injuries too, then our depth would be fine. But again, too, a lot of it, like with the changes they're doing with the development side of all the people that are letting go, and maybe that will change our farm system too because our players will be healthy, and it's just there's still a lot of work in the prospect system. Yes, we have a lot coming up, but there is some in the lower levels, but there's not many to replenish the top ends guys and haven't really made an appearance. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and let's be real. A lot of the Blue Jays pitching prospects have gotten hurt this year, and we've seen the Blue Jays already this offseason fire a lot of their pitching development coordinators, their pitching development strategists. We've seen a lot of the minor league pitching stuff be let go, including our bullpen coach this season. So it's worth noting as well. And I also want to say, look, the Blue Jays have drafted 2 pitchers that have accumulated more than 1 WAR in the big leagues, and one of them's Alek Manoah, who was good and then has been hurt for a while. The other one is like Josh Winkowski, who's a middle reliever for the Boston Red Sox right now. That's it. And since 2016, those are the only pitchers you have been able to draft, sign, and develop. That's a massive problem. We've been there, and I think it's been obviously one of the big shortcomings for the Shapiro-Atkins era, and it's been the reason the Blue Jays haven't been able to have sustained success. It's the reason we've had to bolster our pitching staff with free agent signings like Gausman, with a trade for Barrios, with Chris Bassett, right? We haven't been able to develop our frontline starter, and that's been a problem. I did want to make note, though, and I tweeted this out earlier. I thought it was very interesting that Mark Shapiro specifically brought up Alan Roden and Josh Kasevich's name down there in the farm system, because I want to flash you back to the offseason of 2022. There was another press conference very similar to this, and Ross Atkins at the time was hammering Zach Logue, how he really liked what Zach Logue was doing down in Buffalo, really much appreciated him, trying to boost him up, and how, hey, as the Jays, we really like this guy. They shipped him off for Matt Chapman 2 months later. I wonder if that is what the Blue Jays are trying to do here with Alan Roden and Josh Kasevich, because we have claimed that Alan Roden deserved a promotion all last year, never got one. Yeah. And I think the Blue Jays are trying to put him down in Buffalo, showing that he puts up this monster season in Buffalo, and then ship him out before he can do something. So when one or both those guys get traded, you heard it here first.
Exactly. When there's smoke, there's fire.
Where there's smoke, there's fire. Absolutely. I'm going to play the rest of this clip here because I want to take another note, and I want you to pay attention to the names that Mark Shapiro mentions here as well. Okay, so those guys there, before we get on to Ross Atkins and his notable things there. A lot of young Blue Jays helped the Blue Jays in the end last year. Jonathan Clase was up here. Addison Barger was here a lot last season. He specifically mentioned Spencer Horwitz and Leo Jimenez. And Jesse, off the top of your head, what positions do those 2 players play?
First and short.
First and shortstop. Who are the 2 best, quote unquote, supposed to be best players on our team, and what positions do they play?
Vladdy and Bo, first and short.
Exactly. Isn't that weird that was the quotes that they mentioned there with those guys? In terms of Leo Jimenez, we've talked many times that we think, yeah, he's a very popular trade candidate for this team. He's out of options. He's a little bit older. Yeah, he hit a few home runs, but most of his on-base skills came from just getting hit by pitches all the time. And then we had our doubts about a guy like that being able to stay healthy. Horwitz is interesting because I think he put up an 832, 834 OPS this season, but he is 26 years old. He doesn't have the power. The Blue Jays have shown in the past they don't love Spencer Horwitz, hence with the signing of like Joey Votto and Daniel Vogelbach last year, which buried Horwitz a bit on the depth chart. So I wonder if with Shapiro mentioning those guys as well, that the same thing we mentioned with Kasevich and Roden, that he's trying to boost the value of these 2 hitters to maybe make them the prime prospect in a trade if we can get something back. Just my theory as we get into the offseason here.
I'm definitely digging what you're putting down. Like I can definitely see that. Like for some reason, when you were talking about Jimenez, and I'm going back to the old trade for the Jays. Like this is many moons ago, a player of Andy Echeverria. When we used them in that package to get Reyes, Burley, Johnson, and Whitford and Mathis and that from the Buck from the Marlins. Like I feel like we could be using Jimenez in a sense because I believe Echeverria and Jimenez are even around the same age from that trade. So like I feel like it's almost could possibly be there, and like Horwitz to possibly be like a package, say Pittsburgh to get like one player I've been saying like a Brian Hayes or something like that.
Yeah, I'd want to aim higher than Brian Hayes, but I understand the sentiment that you are putting down here. It makes a lot of sense. The problem is, like, if we trade Horowitz, and we'll get to it in the offseason if that does happen, he was one of the Blue Jays' 3 best hitters this year on a team that didn't score a ton of runs. And now if you are getting rid of that, you have to really be getting a lot back, which I feel like might be a mistake. Anyways, let's get into the general manager, Ross Atkins, and we'll try to move through these ones a little bit more quicker here because we've still got a lot to get to over the course of the episode. But he was just asked the simple question, what do you need to be better at next season? And let's see what he says. Okay. Any quick thought on that, Jesse?
Yeah, they definitely need to be able to complement and have those players. Definitely. I believe they do have a good nucleus building, like with the Buffalo Boys and all that. But one thing that like I'll be talking more in depth later when we do our lessons learned. But like they have the youth, they have like the middle age. They need the veteran presence that isn't a retirement home player. That's all I'm going to say. And I'll discuss more for later on.
So no Paul Goldschmidt this winter then, eh?
Please no.
Okay, next one. Very similar. Very like that. The Blue Jays obviously needed power. We were in the bottom half in home runs this year. And so Ross Atkins was simply asked, what are you going to do to get a power bat into this lineup? And here is what the general manager said. Holy crap, Jesse! I have a lot to say about that quote right there from Ross Atkins. First of all, his quote about contact being the way to score runs in the playoffs. I don't think that's true, and I think there has been studies that have shown you're actually more likely to win games by getting a big home run in the playoffs. So I think that's just wrong from Ross Atkins, and I don't know where he got his data from, but that is not correct. And his comment about not necessarily needing a power bat, but wanting a guy who can go out and have good strikeout, like good contact skills as well. Like the guys who hit for power and also have good contact abilities are Juan Soto, and they're the guys who are making $500 million like a deal. Like they don't come around too often. So when I mentioned off the top of this episode here that I don't think the Blue Jays are going to go for a power first guy like a Pete Alonso, like a Anthony Santander, like a guy who just mashes and hit a bunch of home runs. The comments that Ross Atkins made here really don't make me feel like they're going to do that, and help would explain the terms of why we signed a guy like Justin Turner and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa last year, because they're just really good at putting bat on ball, and I'm very worried that the Blue Jays are going to go that route again this offseason.
No, exactly. And like literally that comment is literally him saying, yeah, we're going to sell, like the player we want is Juan Soto, without saying it. It's Juan Soto.
I think so too.
And like the only like one player I'm thinking like has the power, but it's in a low hanging fruit would be like we were talking earlier in the offseason, like a Christian Walker, like
yeah,
because I don't don't have his numbers in front of me or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure that he's not a high striking guy, but he has the power and he has pretty good back to ball skills from the games I've seen him play. I don't really follow much Diamondbacks games, but I feel that could be something, and that's where again why maybe Horowitz could be out of town in the sense that if we're bringing in say Christian Walker and stuff like that. And again with the whole power thing, there is a lot of power guys are high strikeout guys, and obviously strikeouts don't score you runs or cause runs. But in the playoffs, they definitely have look at Kyle Schwarber. Look at how we lost to the Twins last year. Royce Lewis, home runs. Look at the Mariners, Cal Raleigh, home runs.
Yep.
The Rays in the 2020, I believe it was
Rosarena was hot that year.
Rosarena was on fire, or the home runs, or even against the Jays, Brandon Lau, home runs. How did we have 91 wins in 2021 when we didn't make the playoffs? Oh, we hit a lot of home runs. I think, as the saying is from back in the days with Maddox and Glavine, chicks dig the long ball.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. And think about the one Blue Jays playoff game where we did score a bunch of runs. Teoscar Hernandez had 2 big home runs in that series. So it's I don't know where Ross Atkins is getting his data from, but it is objectively wrong. And I might dive in deep to prove him that he's wrong on that. All right, let's get into his next quote here, as we got a few more before we wrap it up here. This is on recruiting players. Okay, so that's plain and simple. Is just talked about some of the struggles that they might have in order to get a player here. The Blue Jays really haven't had that many issues recruiting free agents in the past. I don't think it's a big issue, right? Do you?
No, but the one thing that I remember from that press conference too is how do you improve from the record you had this year? He doesn't even talk about how recruiting, how that the record to improve it, how it could affect it. So sometimes winning means more, and if the free agents don't see the culture, and as we might talk about later, the rumors of what the locker room's it could hurt the free agent stuff. And when they were talking about they never really talked about how they're going to make the record better after this year.
Yeah, they said they've come up with some plans and what they want to do, and they have a lot of talk. And obviously, think about it. You're a free agent right now. You're going to sign a big 4 or 5 year deal, and the Blue Jays come calling to you, and you're going to be like, well, your pitching staff's getting older. You don't have Vlad or Bo signed up long term. How do I know if I sign a big 5 year deal with your team, you're just not going to suck for 4 years and go into a big rebuild? And I don't know what Atkins and Shapiro can do without saying that. That's why Buck Martinez really said it's important to get Vladdy signed quickly, because then you can prove to other free agents no, we're serious, we're going to do this. And that might be a saving grace in the matter. But I think that's interesting to note there. And it could lead for a lackluster offseason for our team.
Oh, definitely. I was going to exactly say that. What Buck said, you sign everything falls in place.
Mm-hmm. I do want to mention just a few more things. We're running out of time, so we'll get through these next of these Cole's notes very quick. Ross Atkins was asked, where are you going to be in the starting pitching market going into next year? Because you have the 3 veteran guys, Bassett, Barrios, Gosman, and then right now, Bowden Francis and Yariel Rodriguez are lined up to be our 5 starting pitchers. He actually sounded more optimistic about that, to me, at least was the answer I was getting, that he sounded like, yeah, we're probably going to be in the starting pitching market yet again. Think the one thing this front office team has done well is sign free agent starting pitchers. So maybe they're tapping into that strength again, and they will do that. They've also added, they might be looking at some swingmen type as well to help out in the bullpen. And in the bullpen, speaking of which, they did mention Chad Green as last year. Picking up his option was the biggest move that the Blue Jays made. They did say they're going to do something more and bigger than that this year to help fix the bullpen. So a couple things on the pitching side from the press conference I thought was notable. Should pay attention to that there. Do you have a comment on any of that?
Oh, I thought you were playing clubs. My bad.
No.
No, I definitely can see them like going like with the bullpen. Like again, like there's a couple names I see out there, and I know you posted about Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals.
Yep.
Like, we definitely need a power in the back end. Like I would definitely say, like, if we sign like a Ryan Helsley, you put him like in the 9, then you have Romano in 8. I feel like Green in 7. I think that's a good 3-headed like back end of the rotation because I still don't trust Romano. I haven't trusted Romano for years in the 9 hole. For the closing the games. There is one free agent pitcher I would love the Jays to get. Well, obviously it probably won't happen, but it's something we've never really truly had since Roy Halladay, or even when we had the bit of time we had David Price is a true ace, and I would love the Jays to pick maybe dip their toes in and get Corbin Burns because you put theirs would be your true ace because.
Yeah, there are some red flags in Corbin Burns' game. That cutter has gotten worse significantly over the last few years. He's got a lot of innings on that arm. I'm actually genuinely worried that Corbin Burns is not going to live up to the money of a contract that he does sign. Jesse, let's just rapid fire through the rest of these here. I'm going to make a note and give me your 30-second or less reaction on these moves. The first one, apparently after the press conference, Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins met up with the media members, and he was asked, who is your closer for the 2025 season? And he simply said, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Definitely won't be Romano by the sounds of it.
Yes, it's. I agree. It does not seem like they want to give Jordan Romano that role going into next year. I agree with that. Second one, this one came from the news of the coaching staff, is Don Mattingly is no longer our offensive coordinator. He is more relegated back to a normal bench role. So 1 year as offensive coordinator was all it took to give Don Mattingly a demotion. What are your thoughts on that?
Why is he still here?
Honestly.
What is an offensive coordinator? Like they never explained that to us. Like I expected a headset like the NFL with like a microphone and calling plays like that, but like what is an offensive coordinator?
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes too many voices in your ear doesn't really matter if you're only listening to 1 or 2 of them at a time. Never really understood that. And I think Don Mattingly can go back to this role where he could probably excel and be more of a quieter guy behind the thing, should only help this team. Second thing, they fired hitting coach Guillermo Martinez. We talked about that when Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro were asked about who the replacement is going to be. They said they're going to go, quote, they're going to look internally and they're going to look externally. I would bet that Matt Hague has to be the leading candidate for this Blue Jays hitting coach going into next season. What is your take on this here?
I thought that'd be the only option would be Matt Hague. Like this is success he had like with the Buffalo Boys, like turning around Ernie Clement, a Horowitz, and all the kids that the youth were bringing up, and the way he's able to relate to the players being a former player. I think he's the right answer. There's not many other hitting coaches that I'm aware of that could help us, but it is what it is.
I would agree. Hitting coaches, it's tough to see how much they really impact the team anyway. So we will see about doing something like that, but that seems fantastic. And all right, Jesse, give me one positive you want to take away from the Shapiro and Ross Atkins press conference that you heard here.
That he gave us a new quote for the offseason.
Hey, content, baby. Fruit. Content is king, my guy, and we will take it any way we can. So we go from tip of the cap during the season to low-hanging fruit, and yeah, that might be a thing we stick on throughout the course of the offseason. I love that. My positive I want to take away is that anytime your general manager says that payroll is not going to decrease and they're actually going to try to put a competitive team on the field, whether or not that works and is successful, it means we're going to have at least some level of interesting things this offseason, which I'm taking away as a positive. All right, Jesse, 45 minutes on press conference, which I was really hoping for 30, but there was a lot to dissect there. And I think we made a lot of good, very interesting points that'll reflect to the Toronto Blue Jays going forward. We wanted to spend this last 15 minutes here about the lessons that this season might have taught us. What lessons did we learn? What did the disastrous fall from grace that the Toronto Blue Jays had, the way the team looked in the first half versus the way the team looked in the second half, teach us about ourselves as podcasters or as the team or team building or whatever it is may be? You can take this any way you'd like going into the Toronto Blue Jays season, and go ahead with your first one.
First thing I learned is like, it really showed that you can have the veteran presence, but if they're not you gotta have them do what they are doing now, but not what they did in the past. Don't look at a resume.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what they can do right now. Turner, again, won World Series, veteran presence. You look at you bring in a player like Joey Votto, resume. Even the year before, bring him up, resume. Those resumes are great. It look great because the World Series champions or MVPs, stuff like that. But that's not; those are in the past. You need to look at right now and have a modern day veteran where it showed Vlad was being that veteran presence and leader, not someone who's, as I've been calling him, a retirement home player.
Yeah. Had the exact same point here. Justin Turner, who had 2.1 WAR seasons his last year with the Dodgers and last year with Boston, had 0.4 WAR in Toronto. He was better with the Mariners, but 0.4 WAR in Toronto. 39 years old, a guy who was declining skills. Who would have seen that coming? George Springer, a guy who took massive declines in almost every single offensive hitting category last year, got even worse this year. How can you not see that coming? We saw that coming from here, for goodness sake. I can't understand how the Blue Jays didn't see that coming. That needs to be changed. I'm with you on one of the lessons learned there for the season.
Yeah, it was definitely one. I was hoping a Paul Molitor resurgence kind of for Turner. I know I told you that, and I may have even said it on the show, but I'll take that L.
All right, so my next one, and it's kind of going hand in hand with George Springer, but the Blue Jays not only need a cleanup hitter going into the season, we also need a pure leadoff hitter going into this next season. You took George Springer out of the leadoff spot a while ago. I thought it was great, and then they just moved him back there. Absolutely ridiculous. George Springer was probably your worst hitter on the team this year, second worst, depending on some of the other guys. He had the second most at-bats out of everyone on the team. That simply cannot happen. And of course, I have some stats to back that up. Starting with the cleanup hitter spot, the Blue Jays had 12 home runs all year from the cleanup position. The Chicago White Sox had more than the Toronto Blue Jays did from the cleanup spot this year. They were fourth last in RBIs, third lowest in slugging position. They had the third most pop-ups and the second highest soft contact percentage, and also at the top of the order. Leading off a game for the Toronto Blue Jays this year, the leadoff hitter, I believe, hit 205 with a 305 slugging percentage, a TOBS plus of 56. Dog awful for the first batter of the game for the Toronto Blue Jays this year. And when you're starting the game with an automatic out, it's a problem, and is part of the reason, one, why the Blue Jays set the record for most times going through the first inning without scoring a run, and two, why our offense struggled as a whole. So getting a good leadoff hitter and a good cleanup hitter should be a priority for this team.
No, 100%. I was going to say, we have probably our leadoff hitter for next season if they don't put Springer in Jose Abreu Island and just eat the contract, and where we got a player that can give you pop, but also get on base, even if it's a walk or even small ball. Your favorite in Jonathan Clase, that is good. If you can clip it now and quote me now. If he's not our leadoff hitter by the All-Star break next year, then Springer has found the touch again that I had in Houston. That's the only way. I will stand on that mountain and say Clase will be our leadoff hitter with what he showed in a little bit at the end of the season.
Class A needs to cut down on the strikeouts then, and he needs to show a better quality of contact. If he can do that, then I'm with you. He has all the tools to be the leadoff hitter of the future. But I would say the argument that George Springer could be out of that leadoff spot, and it won't be Class A in that leadoff spot going into next year. But either way, the Jays need to get better from that spot, plain and simple. Jesse, did you have another lesson that you've learned from the 2024 season?
Again, like, for free agency, like, we can't be using, I'll call it the dollar store bin, like the bargain bin of like this player can play multiple positions and we can get him for a fraction price. If you need a specific position, pay the money, like pay it, like get it, and don't hope for like them finding their game. Like, again, it's kind of like what I was saying about like the resume. Like the IKFs, the Vogelbachs, like these budget players. No, if you need a certain player, pay for the player.
With you there, my guy. It just seems so simple, right? Don't try to get cute. What was the quote we've given before? That the Blue Jays would rather try to look smart than do the simple thing that would actually make them a better baseball team. I think I'm with you. If you need a left fielder, go get a left fielder. If you need better bullpen arms, go get a bullpen arms. It really shouldn't be more difficult than that. I'm with you.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely one of those things that's just still, like, it's been this whole time under this regime, getting the budget players. So it's a little bit more frustrating now.
Yeah, I agree. And like, look, Rogers makes a ton of money. They don't need to be penny pinching by saving on this one as well. All right, my next bold prediction, and we got to talk, or not bold prediction, lesson that I've learned from the 2024 season is that having a terrible bullpen, no matter how good the rest of your team is a sure way to make sure you do not hit your expectations. And we've talked several times about how bad the Blue Jays bullpen was. Second worst ERA in baseball. We gave up the most home runs in baseball. We struck out the second fewest amount of batters. We allowed the second most hard hits. None of that is good for the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. And if you want to look at a stat I've quoted a lot, and I use this with Jordan Romano in the past, but Fangraphs has one called meltdowns, which is exactly what it sounds like. How many times did your relief pitcher come in and melt down completely? Out of all the teams that are in the playoffs, 10 of the top 11 teams in the fewest meltdowns are all playoff teams, which should not surprise you. The only ones that aren't were the LA Dodgers, who've been having bullpen issues most of the year, and then the Detroit Tigers. But if you look at the Tigers in the second half of the season, their meltdowns have shot down completely as they fix their bullpen going into the second half. So simply, in order to be one of the playoff teams going into next year, your bullpen needs to avoid these massive meltdowns. And the Blue Jays, like priority one, I would say, would be addressing that issue going in there. So having a good bullpen, no matter the year, is always key for your team going forward.
Oh, definitely. Like, literally, the only reason why the Dodgers with their meltdowns, like, they're starting nine as an all-star team, so like it's easier to win a game when you have an all-star team.
Exactly. And they've been battling injuries and stuff back there too. But yeah, like the Dodgers are the Dodgers. We are not the Dodgers.
No, if only.
All right. Did you have another one, or should I go
in Toronto?
If only, my guy. Did you have one more, or should I go out with my last one here?
You can definitely go out for your last one.
Okay, my last one is all about run prevention. And the Blue Jays talked about run prevention in a way last season, how they thought, yeah, this is going to work. This is going to be our tool to avoid like misery, to build our team. We're going to be the best run prevention team in baseball. But there is more to the game of baseball than just preventing runs. In fact, the Jays went all out on defense, and it didn't really work. Like, yeah, they led baseball in defensive run saves. They were behind only Kansas City in defensive WAR, and they were top 5 in almost every single defensive category. But you know what? They gave up the second most home runs in baseball, and even the best defense in the world can't catch a ball that's sailing over the fence, right? And, you know, like your Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who was good with the glove, or your Ernie Clement, who's been good with the glove, but if they're not producing anything offensively, all it takes is one home run given up, and you're losing a game 1-0, right? And like, I think you should go back with the old adage of the way baseball teams would win. You should have great defense up the middle, like your middle infielders, your catcher, and your center fielder can be great, but you can live having some not so great defenders in the corners or at third base or at first base, for example, and in a perfect world, put together a championship winning team. And I'd love to see the Blue Jays go back to that route and kind of shift away from ultra competitive defense this year.
Oh no, I couldn't say it better myself. Like literally, just like you said, like up the middle defense is key because those are your quarterbacks of like your infield and outfield and all that. The corners have the big bobbers, let them hit some runs, and again, when the Jays had success in the past, they had the power in all the corners of the diamond. You got Donaldson, you got Smoke, you had Batista, you had Edwin, all corner
Right.
infielders. Like
And then think about that team
they're
up the middle. They had Pilar in center, Tulowitzki at second, Ryan Goins at second, and Russell Martin behind the plate. Like all great defenders. It all just makes
exactly,
sense.
or even Devin Travis in 16. And
Right.
we had the power in all the corners, and they were above average fielders, like and all that. And then you had your studs right up the middle. What happened? Oh, we won 94 games. We won the East. We
Simple.
got to the ALCS. Like mind blowing. We had solid starting pitching. Wow, well, that's a formula that can work. Why don't we do that? No, we need up the middle fielders all through the diamond. No,
Makes it just sound so simple, my guy. That's going to be it from the main portion of the series. We're trying to keep it under an hour here, but a few minutes left, Jesse. The MLB postseason is underway. And I've mentioned this is the first time in a while that I haven't actually felt like heartbroken going into the playoffs or watching the Blue Jays lose going to the playoffs. So this is the first time probably since 2019, I felt like I can actually go in and enjoy the drama of the postseason and just experience for what it is. I've really enjoyed these few games so far of the MLB postseason. I'm rooting for a lot of former Blue Jays that are in there. It's a shame Yusei Kikuchi didn't get to pitch, but so long, Houston. What are you watching for? Are you excited for in these playoffs, or do you have a prediction of who's going to win? Or yeah, shoot it at me.
Well, I'm going. If people see it on social, my pick is the Padres, the Blue Jays' best friends, to win it because I remember the run they did in 21, like in the playoffs. Like it was just, and I remember watching some of the games with you when they were playing the Dodgers. So it's like their lineup is just fun in the playoffs. One player I just want is like player I think it could impact the playoffs, and he's I call him an MVP. That's for debate is Bobby Witt Jr. Like see what he can do
Yeah,
in the
this is a big
playoffs
coming
and
out
all
party
that.
for him.
Yeah, like and why I think he is like up there for generational like shortstops in like coming future and all that. But one thing we definitely didn't mention is the from that press conference, good old Rosie's quote
about that some player said the clubhouse is an effing shit show. We've talked about this in the past, and I didn't want to give any attention to it, but it's like, yeah, your team's losing. Your clubhouse is terrible. You know who's got a terrible clubhouse? The White Sox. You know what clubhouse was actually pretty bad in Toronto? That 2015 clubhouse. They were a bunch of dickheads. Josh Donaldson apparently was a jerk. But you know what? Marcus Stroman wasn't the nicest person in there either. But you know what? It didn't matter because they were winning baseball games. The Blue Jays this year were losing baseball games. So, of course, their clubhouse is shit, right? Anyways, that's why I didn't want to turn too much attention to that. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. But it definitely was a good laugh, though, like having that one. I mean, that was definitely a clickbait question to ask.
Yeah. Also, Ross Atkins speaks Spanish. I did not know that as well. that threw me for a loop. But
that one blew my mind. I was like, "Where's the translator? What the hell?" Like that he just does it. Like, well then.
It's like, yeah, when he goes, "Forgive me, my Spanish isn't what it once was," and then just went fluently in there. I was riding my bike at the time, listening to the press conference, and I was like, "The world is this? Like, did I accidentally change the channel off of my phone or something, or what was happening here?" It was wild, but you learn something new about Ross Atkins.
I know. I was expecting to see like Vlad's translator there. I was like,
right.
So my 51-year-old Spanish is a little rusty. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I hear it, I'm like, I only know two, Cerveza and C.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are all I need.
Dos cerveza, por favor. And that's all we need to get there. But anyways, that's going to do it for episode here today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Next week, we are going to hand out the grades. We are going to go through our report cards, dish out some grading for the Toronto Blue Jays. And spoiler alert, it's probably not going to be great grades all the way around. Plus, we're going to take a look at some of the bold predictions we made at the start of this season and just have a nice laugh and see how we did going back into them. And obviously, if there is any breaking news between now and then, we will go live and we will talk about all the breaking news that happens there as well. But for Jesse Teresio, I'm Jesse Burrell. We will see you guys next week. Until then, let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks, guys.